Our first speaker is, kind of needs no introduction, from the University of Pennsylvania Graduate School of Education. His book, Who Controls Teachers' Work, is kind of a seminal volume in this area. Please welcome Richard Ingersoll.
Changes. Turn and face the strange. Changes. Don't wanna be a richer man.
Good morning. Okay. Well, I do a lot of research on elementary and secondary teachers and the teaching force, mostly in the U.S. And a couple years ago, we started on a project to see, well, in what ways, if any, has the teaching force, a very, very large occupation in the U.S., changed at all in recent decades? We weren't really sure what to expect, and this is a project I do with my a doctoral student, Lisa Merrill, who's here. And we were very surprised by what we found. The teaching force is indeed changing dramatically in very big ways with very big implications. And a lot of these changes, these trends, as far as I can see, no one's really aware of. Researchers, the public, school people, policymakers. But they will soon become aware of them, I feel, because there's very big implications. And today, in my 11 and a half minutes, I guess, I'm just going to try to very succinctly go through 4 of these changes. There's a bunch of them, and we have a paper with more details. We have copies out here on a table out in the foyer, and we also, stuff is available on our webpage. So, how has it changed? The 4 I'm going to talk about today is the teaching force is much, much larger. It's ballooned in size. The teaching force has become a huge occupation of beginners. It's what we call greening. The teaching force is becoming more and more female. It's now past the 3/4 mark. And finally, the teaching force is far less stable. Huge numbers, more beginners, more females sticking around less long. Those are the big changes I'm going to talk about today. And for each one, there's 2 big questions that are going to jump out. There's the why question. Well, why is this happening? What's going on here? And then there's the so what question. What are the implications and the consequences? And for a lot of these questions, I'm sorry to say, we have far more questions than answers. And we figured out a few things, and I'll briefly touch upon them. And I'm sure, no doubt, a lot of you will have some hypotheses, some theories for some of these questions, and maybe you will get a chance out in the smooth room, is it, to talk about these things. So, let's just quickly go to the first trend. Ballooning. Census tells us that teaching is the largest occupation in the nation. Almost 4 million teachers now. And it's getting even larger all the time. So these bars are from the 20-year period from the late 1980s to 2008. And the white bar here is that students basically increased almost a 1/5 during that 2-decade period. The teaching force increased at 2.5 times that rate, a 48% increase in the number of teachers employed, far outstripping the student base. Now, why is this? Why is there this huge increase in the number of teachers? That's a really good question. One answer is, well, class size reduction. Many states have lowered class sizes over the last couple decades. That means we've had to hire more teachers. And yes, it's true that at the elementary level, class size has gone a little bit down. But at the middle and secondary level, if anything, class size has gone up in this country. That doesn't really explain it. Another big piece is special education. Special education has ballooned more than the ballooning in this country. But to tell you the truth, we do not yet fully understand the source of this ballooning. But certainly there's good reasons to understand. Think of the implications here. So in any school district, the biggest budget item are teacher salaries. I see this as a ticking time bomb. I mean, how is it going to be paid for? How can this continue? Where the numbers of teachers is going up at 2.5 times the client base. So, next trend. Well, for years we've heard about this graying, this aging of the teaching force. That's been sort of a big theme. To tell you the truth, that's really pretty much done. In fact, what we have is a second opposite trend. We call it greening. Because of this massive hiring, there's been a huge, massive increase in the numbers of beginners in this large occupation. And let me illustrate this. So in the late 1980s, this is what we call an experience distribution. So the horizontal axis is number of years of teaching experience teachers have, and the vertical axis is numbers of teachers with those years of experiences. And hopefully you can see it in the back, but the highest peak is about 15 years. That means in the late 1980s, the modal, the most typical teacher, was a 15-year veteran, and then there was fewer, more senior people and fewer beginners. All right, so that makes sense. Let's flash forward 2 decades. 2008, that's the green mountain. Far left, this ballooning. So in the late 80s, we had something like 50,000 first-year teachers. Now the modal, the most frequent teacher, the most typical teacher, is not a gray-haired veteran. They're someone in their first year. Over 200,000 first-year teachers in this gigantic growing occupation, this huge ballooning. Now, is this good or bad? I mean, the so what question, I can't really say. But what we're increasingly seeing is large number of schools where there aren't any veterans, there aren't any mentors. It's going to hurt leadership in a sense. I mean, there could be positive to this growing, gigantic occupation of beginners. Third trend, teaching has, and this is perhaps an odd one, teaching has long been, since the public school system was founded over a century ago, a female-dominated occupation and line of work. But it's becoming more so in the last 25 years. Now, that may seem odd, and let me show a slide here. So in the early 1980s, 2/3 of teachers, 66%, were female. 07, 08, it's just crossed the 3/4 mark, 76%. Currently, and we're going to get the new data soon, we may have passed the 80% mark. 8 out of 10 of all teachers, women. Now, this may seem odd, because in the last 3 or 4 decades, we've had all kinds of other occupations and professions open to women. And there was an argument, well, teaching really wouldn't be able to rely on this relatively well-educated chunk of the population, women. But despite that, we've had this surge in the proportion of teachers who are women. Don't really understand why this is. Is it good or bad? The implications? Can't say that either. I mean, I'm not going to say it's bad to have female teachers. But think of it. Think of it if we have an increasing number, and we already are seeing this, of elementary schools where there's not a single male teacher in the school. I mean, is the public going to really want that? I see this as another trend that there's going to be a growing concern about in time. Finally, the last trend. More and more people coming into teaching, but also more and more people are leaving teaching, a destabilization. Teaching has always had very high turnover, migration, quit rates amongst beginning teachers, and that's increased over the last couple decades. So here's a slide. In the late 1980s, just under 10% of first-year teachers quit teaching after the first year. It's gone up to 13% a few years ago. Now, that seems like a less dramatic trend than some of the other ones I've been talking about. But remember now this greening. We have a slightly higher percent of a far higher number. So in the late 1980s, about 6,000 first-year teachers quit at the end of their first year. They were out. But in 2009, it was over 4 times as many. 26,000 first-year teachers quit at the end of their first year. Why is this? We're not quite sure. Is it good or bad? Well, of course, there's nothing wrong with some people quitting. That happens in all occupations and line of work. And there's nothing wrong with getting some fresh blood in. But this increasing instability of teachers is certainly a concern. In some of my own research, I found that this high attrition of early teachers is a major sort of unheralded factor behind the teacher shortages. So we have this sort of increasing quit rates going on. So let me just wrap up here. The teaching force, is it changing? Yes, in very dramatic ways. It's the largest occupation, it's becoming even larger, it's becoming younger, it's becoming more female, and it's becoming less stable. Huge, huge changes going on here. So we have this, and think of it also, the biggest portion, beginners, of the biggest occupation, teaching, are less and less stable all the time. Now, but the other thing I mentioned in the beginning is this is not really noticed that much. There's these huge changes going on with very big implications that I'm not sure anyone is really on top of. So, and also I see perhaps not good implications for the very theme of this conference, professionalizing teaching. A mass occupation of beginning females, for good or bad, this doesn't bode well for raising the prestige and profession of this line of work. However, perhaps I'll just close here, perhaps there's an irony in all this. The historians tell us that when we founded the public school system over a century ago, we upscaled and became this mass system of young women teachers, fairly low paid. And it was designed to be a temporary line of work before they took their real job, which was being a mother and raising the next generation. So in some ironic way, perhaps this isn't a new face, we're returning to an old face. Thank you very much. Well, apparently I've got a minute. So, do we have a question? And you'll need to speak up, sort of like in the press club. Back here. No. No. That's another trend I didn't have time to go into. There's been a rapid diversification, which is also somewhat surprising because we continually hear the teaching force doesn't look like America. There's actually been a 100% increase in the number of minority teachers and during this 20-year period. A question here.
How much of the greening and the churn been attributed to TFA and programs like it?
The question is, how much is the greening and the churn can be attributed to Teach for America and that kind of thing? Well, very little. The truth is, given that this is a huge occupation, things like Teach for America, while they get a lot of attention, and perhaps rightfully so or wrongfully so, are actually a drop in the bucket. It's really small potatoes. I mean, several thousand a year. I mean, this is almost 4 million teachers in this occupation. But you're getting at the why question, which is a good one. I mean, what's driving a lot of this? And Teach for America is just a tiny piece. Am I? Yes. Thank you very much.
When she left us up to her next event, time may change me.